Yep, here we go. Hey, good morning. Welcome to Pagitt Radio, broadcasting live from the Solomon's Porch meeting space.
We busted out of Peacedale Studios.
We are on the we're on the air live from here.
And I have to say, the technological setup here is beautiful.
You think so? It's
Well
pretty
done.
impressive. Are you impressed with the
I am
Take It on the
impressed.
Road?
Yes.
Take It on the Road version.
I feel like I'm in good technological hands.
Solomon's Porch is the church that Victoria and I are part of, and we're doing our show from here today because our guest, Jim Wallace, is going to be joining us here at this place. And he was in town, and so we wanted to have him come make his way here to Solomon's Porch rather than over to the Peacedale Studios.
Yeah.
So
That's what we do.
that's
Doug
what we do.
Pagitt Radio, we work for
Accommodating.
you. Yeah.
The accommodators. That's what we're known as.
Yeah.
We're known as the big accommodators. Hey, sorry about it being off last week. The plan was to have the radio show live from Denver.
Yeah, what happened?
It didn't come together.
Oh,
The person I was going to interview didn't work. The place wasn't. It didn't work. It didn't work. Yeah, it's a bummer. So we live in a world like that makes you say cripes, and it's going to get the cripes, and they come on. You got to be kidding me.
it
I mean, how can
should.
a guy not take his radio show on the road?
I know. I mean, it's bad enough when I don't get to be on, and then I don't even get to listen. I just have like this hole in my heart. This
Well,
Doug Pagitt
we
Radio.
should stitch it up.
absence.
Let's stitch it up today.
Nothing will fill that Doug Pagitt Radio shaped hole.
I like that idea. Stitching holes in hearts. Like Veggie Radio, live around the room. Hey, a number of things going on in the news that are kind of crazy.
Yeah.
This story, I haven't followed it close enough, so I don't know the details of this.
Which one?
The guy in Cleveland that kidnapped the 3 girls.
Oh, I know. Isn't it terrible?
It could
Imprison
be
them for 10 years.
it could be the worst thing I've heard maybe
Oh,
ever.
Yeah. I mean,
in every way, like it's just horrible,
Yeah.
horrible story.
raping them repeatedly, making one miscarry, then a child, and I mean, it's
Is that true?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. I didn't know about
Yeah,
the and then somebody else had a baby.
kicking one in his stomach until she would miscarry. The times that she was pregnant.
Oh my goodness, it is
And
just.
then one has a 6-year-old who's been living in captivity. I think they
it's
said
the
they
worst.
reported that they've been outside maybe just like a couple of times
Really,
outside.
It is.
So you think about the kind of recovery of there's so much that's been lost that can never be returned. I mean, I guess when we think about God and stuff, we try to think anything is possible, but yet when you suffered so deeply, it's hard to know what kind of repair can happen.
Well, it is, yeah, and there's this for some reason, and maybe this is timely, but in the kind of Christian world that I run around in, there's a lot of conversations about mental health right now.
Yes, they're all over the place.
Why
People
is
are
that?
talking
Do you
about-
know?
I'm not
Is
really
there some
sure if it's
reason?
like the gun stuff, and then
Oh.
that kind of pulled that out a little bit.
Oh, there's not like a campaign to
I'm
open
not
these issues
sure.
up and talk about them.
I mean, I don't know. I think it has something to do with there's so much about guns and that the horrible incident and then the bombing. I think mental health always gets mixed in with that because you think somebody must be really crazy to do that, which obviously are broken, have had anybody that can even think to do that is really bent.
Right.
Obviously.
Yeah, obviously something is
So,
off.
and then the thought of what I don't know. I'm just guessing here, but like, what can we do before people?
Yeah,
get
well,
to
see,
that
and
point?
this is what this is the part where it feels odd to me because I know that we can. There's a lot of mental health work that you can do with people, but then there's this assumption that a lot of people carry that, well, you really can solve like if it's a mental health issue, well, you can fix that. And I'm not sure you can always like if
Yeah.
it was other parts of a person's body that were, if someone
like if they were born without legs, you wouldn't say, "Oh, we can grow them some legs."
Right, or the person who had their legs, had a leg blown off in the Boston marathon. No one's thinking you're going to regrow that leg.
Right. You're going
But
to
there's
think
this idea that the people who had the broken minds or broken brains or broken psyche who did the bombing, well, we should have been able to do something about
we can
that.
fix them. Yeah.
And you really sound like the curmudgeon, right? When you're like, well, I don't know. Sometimes, like maybe fixing. You don't say we talk about prothesis or
Yeah, a
prosthesis,
prosthetic. Yeah,
prosthetic,
yeah,
prosthetic,
yeah.
prosthetic leg. So maybe you have to think about those kinds of things.
Yes.
But there's something that especially in the religion world, there's
We're
something
going to pray it out of you.
because we want to combine spirituality and mental health.
You must be struck by demons. And I tell you, if you struggle with mental illness, there is probably nothing more defeating and horrible than to be told it's a spiritual problem. If you just pray harder, if you have more faith, you're going to be okay. And you're really not okay. And then it's all spiritualized. And anytime we do that to people, I think it can impair potential recovery. It's like recovery. I think we would be better off thinking, how can we support, accommodate, and do the best we can with this and move toward, all of us are trying to move toward health or maintain health as much as we can.
Or at least a healthy way of living. So when someone has an illness, a physical illness, or their eyes don't work or their hearing doesn't work, one of the big questions that people have is, how could you live the kind of life you want to live in light of this? So carrying this with you or not carrying this with you, having this be part of your life, then you think, well, how could you accommodate your life? What changes could you make so that you can still live the kind of life you want?
As full a life as possible. I really like this notion of how can we accommodate this, make room for it, acknowledge it, but then also recognize that it might require some different adaptations rather than trying to think in terms of fixing. I think it's more affirming, and it provides more of a sense of hopefulness for somebody who suffers with mental health issues or other kinds of illnesses that aren't as clearly clearly seen.
Yeah, and maybe that's it. So maybe in the religion world, there's this sense of like, wow, you don't want to give up on people because we can't see what's going on in the brain,
right,
or the psyche. I'm not even sure all this stuff only comes from the brain matter, but you can't see it like you could see a person's inner eardrum that doesn't function, or you could see their leg missing, or you could see the bacterium that's causing their illness. And I'm not. This is not a conversation for me. I mean, I'm not trying to go the direction of miracles or not. Right. Because I don't think miracles are God doing things that aren't physically that aren't possible. I think it's God making what is possible a reality. I think it's a better way to think about a miracle. Right? But anyway, I think some people get hooked on, well, we don't want to say that God can't do something, so let's not think that God can't, because we don't really know. And anytime we don't really know what causes the mental health problem, and anytime something exists in the realm of we don't know what it is, then it feels more possible that God could do something about it.
Yes.
Right?
And
because
we
don't
see
know what's
this
causing
throughout
it, so
human
God can
history,
solve it.
like way back when, Greek and Roman mythology, things that understandings or myths that were developed out of not understanding how the world works, or lesser understanding. And we do the same thing. Who are we to think that we're any different? We mythologize or sometimes spiritualize, if you will, these things. And I don't know. And you see it in generations too. I mean, there's a lot of mental illness in my generations of both sides of my family.
You mean in your lineage.
In my lineage. And it's just the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Well, and this is what it comes up. And for sure it's going to be coming up in this terrible situation in Cleveland. Comes up even more when it's someone young who does something, like shooters. They tend to be young, right?
Yeah.
They tend to be, and you can see it all over the common conversation in our culture, which is, what could we have done about this?
Yeah. How could we have fixed it?
Right. How could we have fixed it for people? And it's a
Well, and I think it's people don't want to just sit in the horribleness of it. We all do it to a certain level when terrible things happen, or we do it to our friends
Yeah,
sometimes.
yeah.
We were talking to Mike Stavland about this, how much you want to, when somebody's grieving, as in his case, losing a son in a horrible way, and people just want to fix it because they don't want to sit in the misery. Well, maybe we just need to let ourselves mourn for a little bit. And then it isn't appropriate. It's appropriate to look around and say, well, what can I do to try to, but maybe we're looking at it in the wrong way when we think, when it's always retroactive, when it's always too soon, and when it's always with the thought that it needs to be a clean slate, or rather than accommodating. I mean, that's where incarceration sometimes, it's like
the worst.
Yeah, it is the worst. And in some cases,
like to punish people for illness.
Yeah.
It's really,
and
and
yet there are some people that in some cases that where you go,
they just do bad stuff.
It's like or that we're trying to protect. In some cases, we're trying to protect other people from this person who's repeatedly done really, really bad, hurtful things. And so that's the way I look at it when I'm okay with it. It's hard to discern who does what and who can be, experience enough rehabilitation to be but it's not a rehabilitative place, and it's just a bad cycle. So
and my fear goes to people saying, and they'll do it this week. I'm sure they are. I mean, I don't run around these circles quite so much, but like, look, that guy in Cleveland, or the men in Boston, or the shooter in here, anywhere that a tragedy of another person's doing shows up in the psyche of our culture. People will say, "Oh, well, that's how people are. People are just a lousy piece of shit, and that's just how it goes, right?" Like that's a very common refrain.
So depraved humanity.
We're lucky everybody's not doing that.
Yeah,
this kind of thing, which is, I despise that so greatly that I would even rather be on the side of like, well, hey, let's consider this a one-off that we could have fixed.
Yeah.
Rather than like a commentary on all of humanity.
The lesser of evil.
Because I don't like that. I don't like that to such a degree that I want to be 100 miles away from it.
Yeah.
But it does seem like sometimes, because I don't think it's a commentary on all of humanity. I think it's a commentary on. I don't think it's a commentary on the ontological nature of all of humanity. I think it's a commentary on the power of brokenness in all of us. So everyone carries with them a brokenness that has that can experience healing, but not to the degree that it's no longer a condition. But somehow, and some people would say, well, that's what we mean by this kind of fallenness and brokenness. Like, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, well, no, that's not at all what I'm talking about. And so we end up in these other conversations, don't we? I mean, we end up sort of tied in. Well, maybe we should ask Jim Wallace to solve that for us today. Jim's going to be on the show.
Stay tuned, everybody, till 11.
On God's Side, and he's going to tell us about what the religious system hasn't learned and what the political system hasn't learned, and how people could.
That's why we have guests, right? To outsource all the solving of problems.
Right. Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't guests like that? So I had this interesting thing happen in this room on Sunday that struck me.
Was I here, or did I miss it again?
Were you here on Sunday?
I was, but at what point?
In our third gathering, we had a special thing happen around Solomon Sports this last week. We started a Sunday morning gathering.
I was there for that.
You were a morning.
Remember, I read that poem that you asked me to read on Sunday morning. Yeah.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah, I was there.
By the way, my faulty memory is not commentary on your significance. It's simply on my faulty memory. Right? So let the record show that when I forget things, which it is, when the condition is fully diagnosed in me, whatever it is,
whatever
people are going to go back and play this kind of stuff and be like, "See, they thought that was funny back in May of 2013, but it was the deterioration was already well underway." It's truly remarkable.
Yeah,
the stuff I can't remember. But I do remember this.
Yes.
We had we did a particular reading out of the book of Mark that I didn't, that's not my favorite. but it was other people's favorites. And there were
Yeah.
people at 5 o'clock and 10 o'clock in our gatherings that really perked up and really
So this
liked
was
it.
chapter 13.
Yeah, it's that.
You never know when God's coming.
It's Jesus
Watch out.
quoting, perhaps quoting parts of Daniel, and just
Oh
it
yeah,
was crazy
stars
though.
are going to fall from the sky and coming back.
And other people didn't like that passage.
Mm-hmm.
It scared them for a long time. So people mentioned that to me, like, look, this really freaks me out. And other people are like, I love this stuff because I think it explains so much. And and there were all these sort of different ways that this could go. And it clarified in my mind during the conversation out of the morning, and then at the 5 o'clock, and we're doing 3 a days on Sundays right now. It's like basketball.
Yeah, why'd you sign up for that?
Training. So we do 3 a days.
It's supposed to make your job
And
easier.
by the time one gets to the third conversation, I felt this real ability to reflect on the previous two, right, which we always do. The second is always connected. But it really struck me how there's two different questions that people ask. One of the questions is, what do you know about this? And what do you think about it? And what are your feelings about it? And what are your how do you understand this? Really good questions that people should ask, right? But the second part of that question is, and maybe the more important one, why does it matter to you? Because the people who loved it and the people who didn't like it at all, because they felt scary, and people, it was more interesting to hear why they felt the way they did about it, why it mattered to them.
Yeah, because some people didn't like the notion of...
More so than why did they, what did they think about it?
Yeah, some people are afraid of this notion of Jesus coming back and having retribution. Some people believe that Jesus has already come back. And then there were other people like me, at third camp, I think, who were always bothered with this notion of this bloody God that looks like all the bad kings that we've ever had.
Right.
And this, it's surely the kingdom can be something better than that.
Yeah. And so where it kind of went to is well, why does that matter so much to you as a person? What is it about that's meaningful to you?
It's a great question.
Which is a different one. Well, Jim has arrived, so we're gonna have Jim Wallace. He's not the noise that you hear in the background, that wailing and crying right now, that yelling. That's not Jim Wallace before he comes in here. So stick with us here if you're watching on the Ustream. Roll over to the next one. We're gonna keep the video running live if you're watching live, and if you're listening on the Spreaker, of course. Stick with us and roll over to the next. Doug Pagitt Radio, broadcasting live from Solomon's Porch this morning.